Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. It is 9 a.m. East Coast time, 6 a.m. Pacific. You need to get in where you fit in if you're in any other kind of time zone. I'm so excited about continuing and really closing out the conversation that we've been having in the month of August about political tension in the workplace. I want you to understand three things before I get into what I want to talk about today. And today is going to be focused on solutions for you and your culture. And the three things that I want you to understand is that number one, every election is an important time for us to pay attention to what our employees are thinking about, what they're concerned about, what they're asking about, and what they're wondering. Every election, because elections matter. Let's be honest about it. It not only matters to us individually in our families, in our homes, in our personal lives, but it matters to our companies and our businesses. There are some industries who literally transform overnight because of a policy or a practice by some elected leader. I mean, you think about how the markets shift. The stock market shifts when political decisions get made. And so it can impact employee morale, it can impact your bottom line, it can impact whether you keep a workforce or whether you actually get rid of people. So there's a lot of things about it. So you should be paying attention to it as a leader inside your organization. Now, I'm going to talk about 2024 specifically, why you need to be paying attention to it, because we're in one of the most hyper partisan times that any of us can remember. Now, I will tell you that during the days of the Civil War was probably more partisan than it is right now. And most people don't believe that, but I'm confident in my knowledge of history to know that the 1860s were a more divisive political time than we have right now. But it doesn't mitigate or eliminate the fact that we're in very hyper partisan times now. And when you add on the fact that social media allows us to get into vigorous, robust debates and people can share misinformation and lies and rumors and personal attacks ad nauseum on a platform with no accountability, and not just one, but all platforms with no accountability. I'm telling you right now, these kinds of conversations about the 2024 election are impacting the employees in your organization. Sometimes they won't say anything about it. They'll just kind of keep it to themselves. But other times it's going to spill over. You're going to have political discussions at work. I don't care how you police it, how you stop it, how you try to get people to say this is not okay to talk about. Those things are going to spill over. And when they do spill over, they can become incredibly problematic. Let me give you a couple of examples. Back in 2018, during the 2018 midterms, politics showed up in the workplace at Google. Now, what do I mean showed up in the workplace? They literally had employees decide to walk out of work because of several political discussions on issues like sexual harassment and their policies and procedures and how they were showing up on the public policy sphere. So literally, employees were walking out. The same thing happened at Meta, aka Facebook, around its involvement to sell advertising to companies who literally were trying to influence the elections in the United States of America in 2020. We all remember seeing Mark Zuckerberg being called up on Capitol Hill and several other leaders of Google being called up on Capitol Hill to talk about who they sold advertising to that were putting misinformation out there in the election cycle of 2020 and 2022, probably even 2018. But the reason why I say this is because your employees are going to have opinions about those things. They're going to be on one side or the other. And when that happens, it has the potential to destroy your culture. Why does it have the potential to destroy your culture? Because somebody on your staff is going to feel politically persecuted or persecuted because of their political beliefs. As a matter of fact, there was a study that was published recently, not my study, but somebody else's study, that said that 66% of employees felt that they were mistreated because of their political beliefs. So that's definitely more than half. That's the majority of employees who feel persecuted because of their political beliefs. Now, what does that mean? That means somebody in your workplace is mistreating somebody else because of what they have said or what they believe politically. And that is not a good thing in your organization. It can lead to low morale. It can definitely reduce productivity, a lack of trust. And it also could lead to people saying, I don't feel comfortable working here because there's nobody here who likes me. There's nobody here who likes me. And I don't trust these people that I work with. And so when you lose those employees, there's going to be a cost associated with it, a massive cost, a significant cost, a cost that could impact your bottom line. And in these tough times right now, where companies are trying to figure out how to right their ship and economically progress and go forward, you don't want people to leave. You don't want to lose that institutional knowledge, particularly if they're a great employee who may just have an idea about a policy issue or ideology or a belief system about a certain policy that most times is immaterial to their job. But because they vocalized that policy in the break room or in the elevator, because they made a comment somewhere along the lines that other people at work took offense and took umbrage with it and began to act out in some kind of negative way. You don't want that in your workplace. So what you want to do is you want to build an inclusive culture. And when I say an inclusive culture, a culture where everybody feels valued, they feel respected, they feel included, they feel visible, and they feel psychologically safe to talk about issues that are important to them. You cannot expect people to divorce themselves from themselves when they come to work. So if they're talking about these things at home, with their spouse, with their kids, with their neighbors, with other social groups that they're a part of, you cannot expect them to not talk about these things when they get to work. But what you want to do is create a culture where these things don't take over your workplace, where they don't have a negative impact on your culture, and it allows everybody to thrive. So today's conversation are 5 ways that you can build a politically inclusive culture for everyone who works there. Now, if you implement these 5 ways, you will mitigate the impact of politics in the workplace. You'll keep people focused on the things that they need to be focused on. You will keep your team together. Again, everybody wears one jersey. I mean, I know sometimes we think that Republicans versus Democrats is, a red jersey versus a blue jersey. Let me just be clear. Your workplace, everybody's wearing the same jersey. Maybe it's the company logo on their shirt, or maybe it's the badge that has the same information on it, the name of the company, the address of the company. Maybe everybody comes to the same location, or they all have the same email address. That means your team is wearing the same jersey. They ain't wearing a red jersey or a blue jersey. They're wearing your jersey. So you want to build a culture where all of them feel like that they're valued, respected, included, visible, and that they can thrive in a psychologically safe environment. So today I want to unpack very quickly 5 ways you can build a politically inclusive culture. And I want you to pay attention to some of these, because some of these I've talked about over and over again, but there's 1 or 2 that I'm going to go into some great detail about and give you some examples of things that you could do that would build a politically inclusive culture to let people know that you as a firm are not choosing sides. And you don't want to choose sides. I don't care what side it is. You don't want to choose sides because you're going to lose people. Now, I'm not saying to avoid political discussions. You will hear that I'm telling you not to avoid them. But I'm telling you as a company, you don't want to seem like you're favoring one aspect or another, but you want to give both aspects some breadth and life inside your workplace. So let me unpack these very quickly for you. And I won't be super long today, but I'm going to give you some value, some significant value. So number 1, the first thing you could do to build a politically inclusive workplace culture for every employee is to have inclusive policies. You got to build out policies that clearly lay out the rules of the road around what is respect in your workplace and also what is disrespect. What does respectful communication look like? What does respectful dialogue looks like? I mean, like having a policy that you can't share offensive memes or videos or post offensive pictures is a good policy. That's a good policy. It's also a good policy to say that we will talk about policies, political policies, let me be clear, political policies and positions, but we won't disparage people. That's another good framework. So you want to have a clear policy that lays out what's respectful dialogue look like and what disrespectful dialogue looks like. The second thing you want to do is to communicate those policies with people. Nothing worse than you going through all of the work and designing a policy that you think will help you to navigate through these difficult political times, but then you don't do a good job of communicating to everybody what the policy is and making sure people are aware of it, and that your managers don't really know what it is, so they can't do their job to help manage conflict and disagreement at the team level or at the unit level because you're not communicating about the policy. So you need to make sure that you drill it into people over and over again what the policy is and that you communicate it in every way, shape, or form. You want people to know what is going on. Regular communication about your policies. You also want to make sure that you enforce the policy fairly and equitably, which is don't allow some people to get loose and wicked with their words and you do nothing about it. But the moment somebody else says something, you're ready to write them up and maybe potentially terminate them. Again, that's why you got to have clear policies. And that's why you got to have a good team who communicates about those policies and a good enforcement process to police what the policy is and who's violated the policy. That's the first thing, is build inclusive policies, communicate about them, and enforce them. That's the first thing you need to do. Now, the second way you can build a politically inclusive culture is make sure you train your people. And when I mean train your people, you need to have training programs on cultural competency and inclusion. See, this is an area where I have some expertise and a lot of experience doing training on cultural competency and inclusion, even cross-cultural conflict, because we always have cross-cultural conflict. It don't have to be an election season to have cross-cultural conflict. We have it all the time. But you got to train your people on how to interact with people who have a different perspective, a different position, a different mindset, a different belief system, all of those things. And let me be clear, sometimes it ain't even just the partisanship that gets people sideways. Imagine if 80% of your workforce are voters and they vote every election and they're passionate about voting. They don't tell people who to vote for, but they're passionate about voting. But you have an employee who says, man, I'm not voting because the whole system is rigged. I think it's just, dumb to vote. So I don't vote. I haven't voted since 1992. You might have some employees who would lose their minds if they heard an employee say they haven't voted since 1992. So you want to make sure that you train your people how to interact in a civil way, how to have civil discussions at work, civil conversations, how to be inclusive and how you deal with somebody like that. And then when you have two people who are in conflict, you want to make sure you train your people on conflict resolution. You got to have some resolution to these conflicts in the workplace. So training people on conflict resolution is a great way to do that. So I would ramp those up during this time. And the last one, which one I think is really important, is you need to train your leaders on what empathy is and how to show empathy. I had the privilege of having a conversation with Microsoft in 2018 about how Satya Nadella was trying to redo or rebuild or reignite or reboot Microsoft's culture, whatever word you want to use. That's what he was doing. And that is, he wanted his managers and people leaders to be more empathetic. So they were looking for consultants, people like me, trainers, who could literally work with them to retrain every Microsoft leader on empathy, how to have an empathetic perspective to people about what they might believe and what they might understand about the world. I'm telling you right now, training your leaders on empathy can change everything. And I will tell you that training on empathy at Microsoft turned the company around. That's why they're back on top. So if you go back to 2014, 2015, 2016, Microsoft wasn't on top because they didn't have a lot of empathetic leaders. But today, they got lots of empathetic leaders, and that's why they're on top. So the second thing is to focus on training programs around cultural competency for your people. You know, how to have a respectful dialogue with people, how to interact with people who are different, conflict resolution, and empathy. Those are the things I would tell you to train around. Now, the third way you can build an inclusive culture is to have open and respectful dialogue about policies, positions, and issues. So when I say having open dialogue, open and respectful dialogue, is maybe you should structure some forums inside your company. These can be done online or in person, which is we're going to have a forum about the 2024 election. Invite people to come and participate. And here's a good idea that I think is important for you to do is maybe bring in 2 outside speakers. These could be local elected leaders who represent both sides of a position or both sides of the aisle. And so it's not your employees who are on Front Street, but it literally might be your mayor, the candidates for mayor. Or maybe if it's not the candidates for mayor, maybe it's, you know, this congressman and that congressman. I don't know how big your company is and the scope and scale in which you sit, but I'm pretty certain that if you needed some help of finding 2 people to bring in, I can help you or introduce you to somebody who can. And that is have an open forum about the issues. Totally. But make sure when you do that forum, you have some ground rules, like what is not allowed to go on at this forum, okay? And what is allowed to go on this forum. And then make sure you have some mediators available, people who are trained in mediation to help you to mediate the forum, not moderate, mediate the forum if things get heated. Third thing you can do is open and respectful dialogue. And I think having an open forum before the election is a great idea for you to do that on both sides, to really just give people both sides the opportunity to be heard and to hear from people who have different perspectives. Now, number 4 is the one I think is really important. And I'll give you some examples of how people have been able to do that. And that is you want to celebrate the diversity of perspectives inside of your organization. You want to celebrate the diversity of perspectives inside of your organization. So you might want to highlight the different opinions that people might have with your internal people. Now, let me give you an example that you should know that a lot of employers have no idea about this. Particularly, most leaders don't know about this, is that you probably have some employees who work for you right now who are actively involved in politics. Now, when I mean actively involved in politics, on their free time away from work, they may volunteer for a candidate, a campaign, or a committee. You also might have people in your workplace who are current elected officials. They might be on city council. They might be on the school board. They might be in the state legislature if you're in a state that has a part-time legislature. You might have some people who work for you who are showing up every day as active civic citizens in their community, in their neighborhood, where they live. So what you should do is to know who is publicly involved, politically involved in your workplace. And it may be a great opportunity to do an internal forum with 2 people who work for you, who care about your company, who gets paid by your company, who has the same values as the company, but they also have their political perspectives. So celebrate both of them. This is what leaders in our company do. They not only work their job with us every day, but they serve in their communities. And we have Nathan, who serves in the state legislature. We have Eric, who serves on the school board. We have Marty, who volunteers for candidate X, Y, and Z. We have, Jennifer, who is on the Water and Soil Commission, okay? And that she is a environmental activist. I mean, like, it doesn't matter what they do, but you want to celebrate those diverse perspectives. And so you may want to highlight the people who work for you, who serve. Highlight their diverse opinions, their diverse perspective. Maybe even curate a panel with them. Put them all together and ask them questions about why they chose to get involved politically and how does that compete or complement their role at work. You'd be surprised that some of those people were able to get elected politically and even run politically because of the brand recognition that you as your company created for them, how they put them in the community. You just don't know. But a big part of keeping your culture intact is to celebrate the diversity that you have. Put together some recognition programs. Like, for instance, if someone volunteers on a charitable cause like homelessness or hunger in their community, and of course, all of these things are connected back to politics. Maybe somebody helps immigrants in the community, new immigrants to the community. I remember in the city that I lived in, we had a group of Somali immigrants who were brought to the United States into our community, and so many companies rallied to help those immigrants. Now, some people may be opposed to immigration, but there was some great leadership where people got involved. And so recognizing your employees that get involved like that is a great way to celebrate diverse perspectives. That's number 4. Now, number 5, the last thing you can do to make sure you build a politically inclusive workplace culture is to stay focused on your employees' wellness and their well-being. I'm going to say it again. Stay focused on your employee wellness and well-being. So be conscious of how stressful politics can be on your people. And so what you really want to do is to make sure you got programs that focus on wellness and well-being. Good, solid programs, effective programs that you already got in place, but remind people that they exist. Not only that, you want to make sure you have some employee resource groups, which are safe spaces for your employees who align on certain issues or care about certain issues or are supportive of certain communities can have a conversation in a safe space about their position. I mean, like, for instance, what if one candidate or committee is totally opposed to LGBTQ plus employees and you have 20% of them in your workplace? They're going to be concerned. They need a safe space they can talk about it. They're not the majority, but they might need a safe space to talk about it. So that's what you could be doing, is to make sure you got good wellness programs and that you have employee resource groups. So I hope this was helpful to you and you have some better understanding around what you could be doing to really help your employees during these politically tough times. How you can help yourself by building an inclusive culture where everybody feels valued, respected, included, visible, but most importantly, appreciated for the diversity that they bring to your organization. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Please share this message with someone who would get some value out of it. If you got an HR colleague somewhere who is struggling to deal with the politics in the workplace and they need some solutions, make sure you share this information with them. So I want to thank you all for watching Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. See you next week, and we will be going on to a new subject. And I'm going to talk a lot about turnover going forward. I want to make sure that we understand what's happening out there and how you can retain your top talent and build a culture around your workplace, particularly in some of the toughest industries that exist. So looking forward to that. You all have a fantastic day. Take care.